Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures, and this week I haven't got a topic to discuss. So this week I haven't got a topic as such. I haven't got a talking point to talk about. For one main reason has been my schedule's gone completely to rats this week. My father's been very unwell, critically in fact, and basically we've spent a lot of time up the hospital this week, and I haven't even had time. The little bit of time that I was at work, obviously you can imagine trying to catch up for the days that I've had off, and just basically I haven't had time to even put pen to paper. But I have got some little bits of hobby news to report from the last couple of weeks. So I thought, rather than doing a talking point video today, I didn't want to not put out a video today, because I've got some things to talk about. And I don't want to leave them, because then by the time I get to do a video and include them, so much time will have passed, it's almost irrelevant. So first things first is I had a game with the rejects last weekend, admittedly while I was on high alert in case I was called away, but Stuart ran a game, and he ran his First World War game. So this is set in the early part of the First World War, so we're talking late 1914. So the warfare is much more fluid during that period. We're not talking about trenches. I mean, there were trenches on the table, but they're very much slit trenches. And basically the scenario was that the Germans had taken a key position, and this was a sort of a what-if game, and basically the British are falling back, and the role of the British in this game was to just delay the Germans. So there was a number of positions on the table that were worth points, so basically buildings, crossroads, there was a wood, and I think there was a total of 20 points available on the table. All but one was held by the British at the start of the game, and the Germans had to win 11 or more points, in other words get the majority of the points by the end of a set number of turns, which marks dusk. And they put up a damn good fight, it has to be said. I was on the British side, and we had two new players with us. We had Colin and Chris, who joined us for the first time in the Shed of War. I hope to see them again, and I hope they had a good time, because it was a very good game. So I had Steve and Colin on my side, and there was Chris, Ray and Sergit playing the Germans, and they put up a very stiff fight. I mean, their main objective, the biggest concentration points, was around this town. I think there was 5 buildings and the crossroads, or 4 buildings and a crossroads, so it was worth a significant number of points, and they threw everything at it. And Steve put up a really good defence. Had some excellent melees where we somehow managed to cling on despite overwhelming numbers. Defending a building is a huge advantage in Stuart's rules, and combined with some very lucky dice rolls, Steve was able to cling on. And although by the end of the game the Germans had won most of the town, they hadn't won all of the town, so therefore they couldn't claim the last points for buildings and the point for the junction, and that proved crucial, because in the end I believe the Germans had reached 8 points, so they'd fallen 3 points short of what they needed to win the game. Elsewhere on the table, on my side, I was facing Chris, and despite the fact that I thought I had the better of him at the beginning of the game, it came to a point in the end where we'd had a couple of rounds of melee, and I'd been forced back out of my slit trenches, and all the advantage that goes with defending that ground was lost, and I had to make a decision. And I decided that there's a stage during Stuart's rules where you get to do a voluntary fallback. 12 inches, so pretty much way out of range of the enemy that you've just left behind, and I managed to do that in good order, because there was a second junction and row of buildings further back and a more defensible position, so I decided I would fall back rather than sacrifice more men, and yeah, we got to the end of the game basically. We'd fought ourselves to a standstill on our flank basically. I had almost been flanked. There was some Uhlans come on the edge of the table and had crossed the flank and really threatening my position. And somehow I'd managed to, with some good artillery fire and some rifle fire from my troops down there, we'd managed to hold them back. But we'd eventually got to a point where I had to fall back, but both sides were too exhausted really. If we'd have had a couple of more turns, we might have proceeded with a bit more aggressive action. But by the time I fell back on my second row of defensive line, I think we'd had enough. In the centre, Colin had put up a really stiff defence of the woods in the centre, despite being massively outnumbered. Ray had, I think it was 6, maybe 8 battalions bearing down on him, plus artillery, and he'd managed to put up Colin had managed to put up a really good defence of the centre. But it was on the other flank with Steve and Sergeant. Steve had defended that village. That's really where it ended up becoming crucial, because we denied them enough points that by the end of the game they'd only gained 8 victory points out of the 20 available, and the British were able to claim a victory for having delayed the Germans enough. But you know what, it wasn't really until the end when I was trying to add up what I thought the points were, but it was really tight and it could have gone either way right at the end, and that's a really good game. Everyone enjoyed it. It was all to play for right up to the last turn of the game. So that was a really good game. I always enjoy Stuart's First World War rules. He's tweaked them a little bit over the various sessions that we have, games that we've played, and they just get better and better with age, and his scenarios get better and better each time. The only other thing really I've had time for this week is a lot of thinking time. You can imagine sitting around in hospital wards and various waiting rooms, a lot of thinking time, concentrating on, or trying to concentrate on, my next project. Now, I've mentioned this before, I'm going to do the 1066, the battles of 1066. So what I'm going to end up with is a Saxon, a Viking and a Norman army. And I'm going to use Little Wars TV's Raven Feast rules, and I've actually I had originally made up, I'd worked out what models I needed and what packs I needed from Bacchus, only to find they had some pre-made packs specifically for this particular campaign and Raven Feast. So after spending ages working out what packs I needed, they had them all there ready to buy as a job lot. And in fact, if you buy a Saxon army in its entirety, you save a little bit of money on buying the packs individually. But also there was a 3-army bundle deal where you save even more money. So I bought 3 armies for about £114 English pounds. What other hobby can you do that where you can buy an entire new part of your hobby for such a small sum of money? And in fact, if anything, it hasn't cost me anything. But that's a subject I'm going to come back to another time, because I've been making a little bit of money that has paid for this new project. But I'm going to come back to that perhaps next week or the week after, because there's a subject I want to touch on. I've touched on it before, but I want to discuss it again. So the Bacchus order's gone in and I'm just waiting for those models to turn up. I've already got a couple of books to do with the 1066 campaign, but also that particular early medieval period of history, really interesting, ties in nicely with the later medieval, the Wars of the Roses. There's a path from here to there that is, you can see it. There's a lot of history in between. You've got the anarchy, and then you've got the Wars of the Roses. Very bloody few hundred years of English history, and very interesting indeed. And the 1066 command, I mean, I'm going to end up with enough models, or 2 armies. I can do loads of what if Vikings versus Saxon games. I can do the 3 main battles of 1066 itself, the initial conquest. But there's and perhaps another decade's worth of other minor skirmishes and bigger battles as the Normans struggled to maintain their grip on the country. So there's loads of battles that I can do with the models that I've purchased. I'm going to be painting these during the Analog Hobbies Painting Challenge in the winter. So I've already put my order in this week. They usually take a little bit of a while to come from Bacchus, which is fine because I'm ordering well in advance, and then I can get everything mounted on strips all ready to paint. primed, everything all like that before the painting change. So I'm hoping this year I'm going to have a very clear plan for the painting challenge, but not a big project. You know, really, when you look at it, it's not that many models. So, you know, and I'm at fairly small bases. I've been sorting out bases, so early stages of a new project, and so I'm looking forward to that. As you can see from my desk, my stake markers, these are the rows of sharpened stakes put in front of archers. I've been in the process of trying to do a video for the last 2 weeks. You can imagine I've got none of that done this week, and I don't want to progress making these. I mean, these are only like a couple of steps away from being finished. You know, once I've done the next stage, I'll clip off all the bits at the bottom. It's just they're handy to hold these with. But you know, I've not made any further progress because I want to film it, and that just means I've got to get everything set up, and I just ain't had the time. It's just been that sort of week. I haven't had the time, or to be honest, in the early part of the week, the motivation. So you know, it is what it is. So that's really the main things. I haven't really done much else. I started reading some books about the 1066, but it's very hard to concentrate on anything when you're in a hospital. It's too noisy. There's always someone wants your attention. It's too hot. I mean, obviously they're not designed for visitors, they're designed for the patients, and rightly so. Right, so that's it. That's my feeble excuse for not having done a proper video today. I will try and do something for next week. I do have an idea for a video for next week. Again, it's going to come down to, do I find enough time and enough motivation to actually write a script, or am I going to have to wing it again next week? So that's it for this week. I hope you found what I've done interesting. As I say, it's not a talking point video this week, it's more just a hobby update really. And I'll see you again next week, hopefully.